Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I am delighted that you all are here. I am Marcia Mantell. I'm going to be your presenter this evening. I am a person who loves everything about retirement, and I really like to help women in particular, though any men who are here are welcome as well. I love to help women get more on board with their finances and to try to make it a little fun, because I hear some people think talking about finances can be boring and dull. That is not what we're here for tonight. We are going to make it fun, and we are going to be financially fearless by the time we're done in the next 45 minutes, and then we'll have an open Q&A session. So listen, first and foremost, I want to thank my hosts. I am just so thrilled that Jonathan and Christina reached out to me and said, hey, do you do some presentations? We would love to get our clients and their guests off the couch onto the Zoom, talking about some more financial pieces to the equation. So I am just really thrilled to be here. I live in the Boston area, so I'm not too far from you all. I'm an author and a blogger, and I've been in the retirement industry for the last, 30 years. And I am a baby boomer. So I particularly love all of us women, let's call it north of 50. We have a lot to do yet, ladies. We have a lot of runway in front of us. We have a lot we have to grasp, and it is time to get started. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. We have a challenge, ladies. There's a reason some of us maybe aren't as comfortable or cozy with talking about finances, talking about our future, figuring out this retirement thing. But it's time to conquer our challenges. And then let's leverage what we've got. Let's leverage all of our benefits and the advantages that it is to be a woman to change the world. That's really what we want to do anyway. So today we're going to talk about the challenges, and we do indeed have some challenges presented to us, but we're still going to put on our capes. We're going to put on our masks, and off we go. The first challenge we have, ladies, is that we are new to money. Women have not been historically able to even own lots of pieces of their financial picture. And here's what I mean. We couldn't get our own credit cards. Many of you who are north of 50, you know we couldn't get credit cards without our daddy's signatures as recently as 1974. How about we could be fired for being pregnant? Well, isn't that a treat? So we couldn't earn our money once we were paired up or married and having babies. It was illegal, finally, to discriminate against pregnant women, 1978. I don't know about you all, but 1978, I was entering my senior year of high school. So this is really recent history. There was quite an era of time, many, many, many decades, where husbands could take out a second mortgage without their wife even knowing. Then they'd up and die, and the wife was left with this debt that she had no idea about. That was finally disallowed. Oh yeah, 1984. I'm already a college grad at this point and married. And my favorite and most frustrating part of our lack of ability to have ownership is that at-home moms were not allowed to save in an IRA. Not nearly, we could save $250 after a few years, but at-home moms were dismissed until 1997. So when you look at just our recent history, and I'm not even talking about, colonial America here or the English, setting up financial estate and manners rolling down through the sons. This is very recent history. We are new to money. And it partly explains, why we're maybe not as comfortable. Well, heck, we just haven't had it for that long. Our careers have also been slow in the making. Not us individually, we've done the best we could, but what I'm really talking about here is the corporate pipeline in corporate America. Women are getting 50% of the degrees out of college. Most of us work at some point. We enter, the same percentage of women enter basically as men. It's almost 50-50. 48% of women come in at the entry level, but only 38% make it to the next level of the ladder. 10% of us drop off already. Could be because we're home having children and raising our children, or it could be we're already fed up. But nevertheless, fewer women go from the entry level to management, fewer still to director, less than a third ever make it to vice president, barely any still make it to the top of the corporate ladder. And that 21%, I think, is a little generous, but we'll go with it. This is what the data show. But it is very hard for women to make that journey up the mountain to earn those big, big, big bucks. There are a lot of forces against us, not the least of which is our families. So just recognize that if you're not as comfortable and maybe not quite as fearless as you'd like to be, part of it is because of the situation women have found themselves in. So I want to take you on a little journey here. The 1950s. I just love 1950s fashion. Look at these women. They look beautiful. And in 1950s, about 18 million women were in the workforce. Only a third of US workers. Now we've just come out of the Second World War. Women worked to some degree, but now they're back home and they're looking beautiful. No women were CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. That was our picture back in the 50s. A lot of us, these are our moms, right? My mom, I think, made every one of those outfits. She was lovely. Fast forward 20 years, it's the 70s. Yes, I did skip the 60s. The 70s, now women are more in force. We're coming into the workforce in a pretty big way. These are the baby boomers have now, in large tranches of us are in the workforce. 30 million of us women have now joined the labor force, which is 38% of all workers. One woman CEO. And I think many of you probably know the Katharine Graham story at the Washington Post, but she was the first woman CEO of any kind of major company in America. This is in the 1970s. The 1990s, well, I'll tell you, the woman on the left looks just like me when I was at Fidelity. It's amazing. Yes, I had that kind of scarf. We had the phones, hooked with the coil. The desk and the papers look just like this. Now there are almost 54 million of us in the workforce at all kinds of levels by the 1990s, 45% of the US workforce. What a trajectory from the 50s to the 90s. Yeah, 2 CEOs were women. So it really wasn't until about 2019, just before this current decade, where women have become the powerhouse that, frankly, that our daughters know today. 75 million women are in the labor force, not quite half of all US workers, and now 33 CEOs in the corporate Fortune 500s. So we are making progress. It is evolutionary. It is not necessarily revolutionary. And it takes a long time, and our comfort has to build with it. But it's an interesting thing happening. Our financial literacy is not keeping pace with our careers or our fashion. A lot of high net worth women leave all long-term financial planning to their spouses. Do you know how many? Well, if you're a boomer like me, all of us older women, 55% of us report that we leave the planning. If we're married, of course. If you're not married, this doesn't apply. But married women, 55% leaving all long-term financial planning to our husbands. Gen X, even more. Millennials, the same. Almost 60% of younger married women are bailing out of their financial long-term planning, relationship with this money. And I have to tell you, this survey came out just a couple of years ago, and it stunned the industry. We could not believe, especially as older women, we've tried so hard as an industry to get financial education out there. You're working with your advisor, so you're already smarter than the average bear. We couldn't believe that women were sliding backward. But what this starts to say is we need to understand women's real roles in the household with the families. And sometimes we just give up on the financial pieces because we're doing everything else. So we tried to look at different cuts of this. Like, is this real? Well, just recently, at the end of last year, Fidelity put out and did a new survey, and they asked a slightly different question. Of married women, what percent say that we are the primary decision maker when it comes to retirement and investment planning. So not just saving and doing the household budget, also important, but who's gone beyond that to the investing side of things? Well, 17% of boomer women. You can kind of say, okay, yeah, I kind of get that. But only 21% of the Gen Xers. I know a lot of you are here today. You're in your 50s, the youngest of the 50 crowd here today, and only a quarter of the millennials. So again, our financial literacy is not keeping pace with our careers, nor are we getting smarter with our retirement financial decisions. Now, interestingly, when we talk about retirement, the language is very different, and the era we're entering is considerably more complex than the accumulation era. So a test that's still out online took a look and asked 38 questions. And the 60 to 75-year-olds who took this questionnaire about retirement income had some results. And let me share them with you. Well, 18% of, these are boomer women, right? These are us. 18% of us passed this particular test. How about our men? 35%. So ladies, I have two messages here. The first is, okay, that's a really bad score. Let's just face it, that is not helpful. As all of us are marching into retirement, we need to be able to understand what we're dealing with on financial risks, how insurance and annuities work, how we create retirement income. That's what this test was about. And if we're relying on our men, which we saw in the last slide, they're not actually doing that much better than we are. So this is maybe a case of the blind leading the blind, but somebody's got to take the lead, and ladies, it needs to be us. And the reason I can say it needs to be us is because we are very confident in our financial knowledge. 85% of those same boomers who took that test say they're extremely or moderately knowledgeable about the financial side of retirement. Remember, only 18% passed, but by golly, almost everyone felt extremely confident that they know exactly what they're doing. 12% of the women of those 18% who passed share the decision-making responsibilities with their spouse. So you can see we're feeling really good and really knowledgeable, but yeah, when we ask questions, then we're not doing so well. So it was 2017, pre-pandemic. I went looking for more recent data. The American College has not updated the data, but another organization looked at, maybe instead of just looking at retirement income, let's just see how FinLit, as we call it, financial literacy, how's everyone doing among US adults? So there's some organizations that team up and they ask 35 questions or so about more basic stuff, because maybe retirement income's a little too hard. They ask about credit cards and debt and risks, and really what are the basic fundamentals around finances. How are we doing? Well, you're looking at this chart. Every year since 2017, sorry, what's that, 6 years of data, 50%. Only half of American adults understand these basic questions about financials of any sort. And the percent of questions, I thought, oh my gosh, did women score a lot higher than men, or was it the other way around? Is it a 90-10? No, it's not that far different. Again, 55% of men, the percent of questions answered correctly, men answered 55% correctly, and women 45%. So again, we're equally by gender not knowledgeable enough about financial literacy. And that's a problem. But again, I take that step back and I want you to do the same and say, well, again, we have not had every opportunity known to us, but we are doing amazing things. We're doing amazing things on the earning front, but we're really good at spending. We're particularly good there, ladies. On the saving front, and more to come. So on the earning front, here's where we're doing really well. You saw those initial numbers, through the decades. We are bringing home more bacon than ever. We are earning in powerful ways. 54% of women are the primary breadwinners in their households. 41% of moms are the primary breadwinners in their households. So yeah, nothing like having two jobs, right? And 30% of wives are out earning their husbands. This is powerful. This is amazing. And it's a great start. As I mentioned, we also are pretty good at spending. 62% of all new cars in the US are purchased by women. 85% of us take charge of the day-to-day finances. We run the household, we run the checkbook. And 53% of women who are single own their own homes. So we're good at spending our money, and not just at the grocery store. We're talking about new cars, which today cost a fortune, and owning homes and owning property. So again, great steps. When you think our moms couldn't do any of this in our era, they didn't even run the day-to-day finances. They were given an allowance, many of them, and had to make that work, make those ends meet, but they weren't buying homes, and they certainly weren't buying the cars. So this is a great story. But where we start to lose steam is in our ability to save, and save effectively. So what we find is that women have saved 36% less for retirement than men, and yet we're on track to live 5 years longer. 22 is the percent of women, boomers again, 55 to 66, who have not yet retired. Only 22% have saved $100,000 or more for retirement. So I look at that, and this is what keeps me up at night. It's like, oh my gosh, my lady friends are not saving enough for retirement. We're still going to spend, but we don't have any money left. And I look at that and I shudder. But then look at the men. Only 30% of men in the same age group, the ones closest to retirement, have even saved $100,000 or more. So it's not just us ladies. And 19% of women are confident that they're going to have enough money throughout retirement for what they need. 35% of men. Again, overall, these scores, these rates, every single data point we have out there says we need to do more. And that comes to investing. Here's where we are. Women overall are very good investors. Now, you're working with Christina and Jonathan and the teams at Cornerstone and Milestone, which is fantastic. And they're going to help you in this category as well as the others. But you can't just leave it. You can't just say, okay, whatever you think we should do, John and Christina. We still have to be involved in investing. And it turns out we're really quite good at it. So during 2021, big pandemic, as you may recall, 51% of boomer women increased their retirement portfolio of stock holdings, which is fantastic. Except here you see where men actually did a much better job. 78% of men increased the stock portfolio. And the reason that's important is because we're going to live a long time. So we may need some more growth in our portfolios. Talk to John and Christina about that. 31% of boomer women who have primary responsibility for long-term financial and investment decisions. So still only a third of us are taking the investment side. We've done so well on the earnings side, relatively speaking, but we're not quite there on the investment side. So we need to get more comfortable with that. And I do indeed acknowledge and recognize that there's factors stacked against us. We still don't earn the same for the same jobs as men. I always find that stressful. Nurses, predominantly nursing is a female-driven and female industry. And the men who are in nursing get paid about 10% more than women for the same jobs. Like, how can that be? We're working on it. Men outnumber women 2 to 1 for their first promotions. Could explain partly why women say, I'm not interested right out of the gate. We do tend to choose lower paying careers, partly because we're comfortable with some of those, but a lot of the reason is because we're having kids, and you can't necessarily climb the corporate ladder and be an at-home mom at the same time. It just doesn't work. And women do spend 2x more, 2x more time running the family, but we spend about the same number of hours per week at work as our husbands, our male partners. So we're just, the deck is stacked against us in some ways, but we're still powerful. We're still going to become financially fearless And look at where the numbers are going. Globally, women own $93 trillion. That is a third of the global wealth controlled by women. That's not quite 50-50, as you can see, but we're making good headway there. Now, when you come to North America, 35 trillion is in our hands here in North America. And what's interesting is women have a very strong preference of how they want to invest their money, whether they inherit it, whether they earn it, whether they're investing it well. Affluent women, 45% of affluent women want and insist on values-based investments. 47% of the lower high net worth women and almost 60% of upper high net worth women. So women overall, much more so than men, feel very strongly about their investments. So when we get to that investment side, we also speak up. And I would strongly suggest that you have this conversation. It's a question you can ask Jonathan, Christina, your advisor. Ask them about different investments, different types of investments. Do you understand what you own? Do you understand why you own it? Is it where you still want to be? You get to have a say, even when working with advisors. And it's a powerful place to come from. So I don't want you to shy away from asking these kinds of questions, because you're just going to keep learning. And we've got plenty of years in front of us to keep learning. And in fact, probably decades. We're going to have decades to be investors, decades to spend that money. There's a 50% chance you are going to live a really long time. And by really long, I mean, there's a 50% chance you will live till 88 if you first jump the gate and make it over 65. But the longer you live, the longer you live. So for females who get to 85, there is a 50% chance you're going to make it all the way up till 93. My mother-in-law just celebrated 98. My father-in-law's birthday is in 2 weeks. He'll be 99. Women are living a long, long time. So we need to be really fearless when it comes to our money. We need to own it. We need to control it. We need help with the investing side. Fantastic. Help with the planning. Great. You ask for your resources. You need to be fearless. And now it is time to conquer these challenges that that's the basket we've been given. So, okay, that is what it is, but let's take some steps to really get our financial confidence built over these next short amount of time. Let's say the next year as a goal to make sure you're really hanging in there well and preparing well for retirement, for life after 50. So here are the 5. The first is to schedule time into each week to work on building your financial literacy, wherever you are. By the way, I can't see any of you on here, so I am literally talking into my computer. So you know who you are, you know how old you are. And there's plenty of time to keep building, and wherever you are, age-wise and knowledge-wise, lots more to learn. So schedule time. And I know I see this in audiences when I get to be in person. It's like, but I have no time, Marcia. There's no time for me to do this stuff. Yeah, there is. And I'm going to show you why. You know why? Because we spend 3.8 hours a day on average just playing on our phones. Okay, you could take an hour out of your day then, 1 day a week, 1 hour to work on your financial literacy. We spend 3 to 4 hours a day watching TV. It's fun. We could take an hour out of that to work on our financial literacy. When planning for a wedding, our daughter's weddings, oh my gosh, no problem. We will carve out 10 hours a week, 12 hours, 20 hours a week for an entire year, just planning this one day. And let's not forget, every year, Thanksgiving, we'll spend the entire month of any free time we have planning for Thanksgiving to get our family and friends together. Ladies, we have time to carve this out. And I have found the trick is to get it on my calendar. Now, you scheduled time already with John and Christina, and that's terrific. Keep that up. But when you leave the office and you leave the meeting, you now need to build it into your calendar. Mine happens to be on Friday nights. I know most people would say that should be date night or something more exciting, but it stems back from when Dan and I were first married. We were super poor. He was in lab, and I never knew if we'd have money for rent at the end of the month. So while he was in the lab Friday nights, I was balancing and playing with the checkbook and seeing where $38, was overspent somewhere. So you can build in good habits a little bit every week, and you get the ball rolling and you get feeling much more comfortable. Tip number 2 for becoming a financially fearless female after 50, it is time to spring clean your house. And I don't mean your actual house. So I look at all the different accounts that we women have, and that if you're with a partner or a spouse, both of you together, you got stuff everywhere, right? You've got savings accounts. You might have 529s if you're saving for your kids or grandkids. You need an emergency fund. Oh yeah, you have a bank account. I have a freedom fund. That's the Marcia money, Marcia Freedom Fund, MFF. That is your bucket of money that you don't account to anyone for. Do you have one? You should. Now, Dan has a freedom fund too, but women need to have their own money to do what they want without asking anyone for any kind of permission. Well, these are all what I call your first floor of your house, where all the essentials get done. So where your kitchen is in your house and your family room and all the day-to-day things that happen in your house. Well, that's what these types of accounts for. It's your short-term, your cash flow, making that house run. Know what you have, get it all organized. The second floor, where all the bedrooms are, maybe a second family room. Well, this is where all your retirement accounts live. And it's everything from what will become your Social Security benefit, your IRAs, your 401ks, your 403bs, your pension plans, your health savings accounts, if you have one. All of these are your long-term accounts that need care and feeding, and they need to be organized, because what's coming in retirement is you're going to have to use all of those accounts on the second floor, have to drip down into the first floor to keep the household running. So it's really important that you get a good handle on what you have. And pleasantly, many of you will be surprised, like, oh my gosh, we have this much money now. I mean, you're 50, you're 55, you're 60. You have amassed some good amounts of money in some of these accounts. And if not, it's not too late to identify where you need to save harder, faster. I call it super save. So you need to see all of these accounts. You need to be organized. You need to know where they are, know where the passwords are. Do you know how to get into your spouse's or partner's accounts? Do you have, your digital footprint ready so that as you enter retirement, you will be ready? The third thing in spring cleaning your house is dealing with your insurance. We always have to protect our income. We protect our home, our cars, our life, all pieces of our property, home and property, and personal well-being. So make sure you know what you have. You can reassess it. Some people, once they're over 60 often, maybe feel they don't need as much life insurance. Other people feel they need a lot more life insurance to leave as a legacy. No right, no wrong here. It's just know what your strategy is. Talk to your advisor about that. And I call it ditch the debt. Ladies, we have the doghouse out in the backyard. That is your debt. And getting a better handle on your debt, be it credit cards, student loan payments that either you still have from school or you had parent loans for your kids, your car, whatever you have in terms of debt. Mortgage is a separate decision, but all that other consumer debt, it's super important to get that paid off. Frankly, it's ditch the debt and do it before retirement. So you're entering retirement with the best possible balance sheet you can. And it takes some time to do this. This is, as you're carving out something to do every week, this would be a big review. Spring clean your financial house, work with your spouse or partner and your advisor, and make sure you know. Third step to overcoming our challenges. I call them establishing best financial practices before retirement. Retirement is so fundamentally different. When that paycheck stops coming into your household, whether you're earning it or spouse or partner, it's gone. When you say goodbye, that paycheck stops immediately. So getting ready for that big day, kind of top of the mountain day, there are things we can do now to make sure we're better prepared for when that happens. So some of the things, you can do them at any age. I just listed a number of ideas here. In your 50s, automate everything possible. We need to be able to keep our credit scores up. We need to automate. We need to be on top of bills and everything else we're doing. Split your paycheck into multiple accounts. You've already got your 403B, your 401k going off. Redirect some money to an HSA if that's an option, or redirect to just your savings account so it doesn't all land in your checking account to be spent. Dig out of debt, save aggressively for retirement. There are catch-up provisions that start at age 50 in your retirement accounts. For those of us 60 and still working, check on your credit score. We need a really good, strong credit score going into retirement because we still need to buy things. We may be buying a condo, selling a house, buying a condo sort of thing. You need a high credit score to make that happen. Buying cars and taking out a loan on them. If you're going into a retirement community, all these things require strong credit scores. So make sure you know yours and know how to improve it if maybe it's not as strong as you'd like. Think about paying off your mortgage, pros and cons to this. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying explore how you want to enter retirement, consolidate and organize all those rooms in your house. And then this is it's an opportune time to think about Roth conversions. And you'll talk to your advisor about that if it works in your particular financial situation, but this is the time to do it. Then when you're somewhere in your 60s and ready to retire, you're going to be faced with big decisions, big irrevocable decisions. When you're going to claim Social Security, how to get into Medicare and do it correctly, on time, and without penalties. Prepare for required minimum distributions, the RMDs. So that second floor now has a whole bunch of tax rules to every one of those types of accounts. One of the biggies are the required minimums. I'm going to talk about those in a second. Also consider your gifting strategy. For a lot of women, leaving a legacy, leaving something to our kids or our grandkids, nieces, nephews, or to a charity that's very important. This is super important. It's sort of a core value to who we are. And there are strategies that can make it more effective. But it's important that you start to identify that and be very clear with what you want to do if you leave any money at the end. I'm not sure I'm leaving any money at the end. I'm going to live a really long time and I'm going to have fun spending it. But should I have a few bucks left, maybe I'll go to my girls. Get comfortable with investing so that you minimize risk, but also so that those investments that you have can kick off income and growth when the goods are there, when the market's going up. You have to always be thinking this long-term 30-year runway all the way until you're 90. When you're 90, you can scale back, but it's really, we've got years and decades in front of us. So I liken this transition to, we're in our 50s going up to retirement, whatever age that's going to be for you. Lots of our portfolio is in the building phase, right? We're accumulating money, stocks, bonds, short-term, a particular asset allocation to meet our long-term target number. But then the closer we get to retirement, some of that money starts to turn. It's like a spigot. So we start to turn down maybe a little bit of the growth, but it's up to you. You need to figure out your portfolio with your advisor, but some of it has to be considered for transition money. In other words, going from the second floor, dripping down to the first floor. Once you're living in retirement, then you're going to think about that money has to do double duty. It doesn't have to be a 50-50 portfolio, but your money needs to both continue to build so that you have the money that you need, the amounts that you need kicking off into income and beating inflation. So your money has to do a whole lot more when you're in retirement than it even needed to do while you were still accumulating and putting the fuel in the tank all those years. Now, required minimums are so important that they actually are number 5. This is what I think women need to do and start to really understand what is going on here in RMD time. So required minimums begin at age 72. And what these are, it's a law. The IRS comes knocking at your door and says, hey, you've been saving in those 401ks and those IRAs all these years. Outstanding. But we now need to be paid. It's time for you to pay your taxes. So any traditional IRAs, or you might call them rollover IRAs, SEPs and simples, if you had a small business, your 401ks, 403bs, 457s, and your Roth 401ks, but not your regular Roth IRA, they all have a required minimum distribution, a certain amount that the IRS says you need to take out, literally take out of those accounts, put them on your 1040 as income, and pay your taxes on them. That's what's going on. Inherited IRAs are different. I'll come back to those. So what we're talking about here is every single account you have on the second floor, you need to calculate a required minimum distribution. Your team will help you at the advisory shops you're at, and there are tools online. So don't worry too much if it's like, oh my God, I don't know how to calculate it. The calculation is not important tonight. Just know that that's what's going on, that there's a value calculated. You have $1 million IRA, some percentage of that has to come out every single year from 72 on. You're going to have to withdraw from each of those accounts at least the minimum. You can take more, but you can't take less. You will pay your ordinary income tax, and any shortfall, if you needed to take out $5,000 and you only took out $4,000 in a particular year, well, you're $1,000 short, and you will pay a 50% penalty on the amount that you missed the RMD. So this is just a super important point to know. It's every account. There are nuances. There are different kinds of rules. I'm not going to go into all the rules by any means tonight, but I want you to just understand that if you've got a 401k over here, a 403b over there, a SEP IRA separate from your rollover IRA, and you're at 5 financial companies, you have to manage all that. And that's why I'm suggesting that doing the spring house cleaning can really help you prepare for these RMDs, because your 401ks could move into an IRA, or your 403b could move into an IRA, or you decide to keep them intact, but you're at least organizing all your IRAs. I'm a bucketer, so I literally had 5 different traditional IRAs. Some were rollovers, some were traditional. I was like, why do I have all these? Well, they all had a story to them. I like to track them. And it's like, well, this is stupid. That was fine in my 40s when I didn't have to worry about retirement, but get serious, Marcia, get them all organized. So I've done that. It takes a little bit of time. It's a few phone calls. It's pushing some buttons. It's not hard. And again, your advisors will work with you on this. Now, I want to say here, I loved this graphic when I found it. This is what it's like dealing with RMDs when it gets to be your time to have to take required minimums and figure this stuff out, or just talking about it, trying to figure out these crazy rules. There are so many things to think about. Should I move money? What if I have a Roth? Which table do I use to calculate my required minimum? What if I'm still working? What if I miss a deadline? It is so crazy, and it can be so hard, but fear not, because you're a financially fearless female. This you can do. And you just work with your advisor on it and do some research, do some reading. There's a million articles out there about RMDs. Pick any of them, and you start to learn the language. You start to become familiar with these topics, and it makes your conversations with John and Christina or your advisor so much more meaningful. You're not feeling so lost in the conversation when you start reading and start learning the language. So that's the general idea of RMDs. Now, in addition, there's a whole lot of swirl right now with RMDs. Starting in 2019, we had big changes to the rules. And that's where we all of a sudden became age 70. 72. You may remember 70 and a half as the RMD age. For any of us a little older even, we were thinking we had to start taking distributions at 70 and a half. That changed in 2019 to 72. But also inherited IRAs got a redo, and it's not necessarily favorable. So a couple things to think about. If you inherit money from your spouse, from a parent, from a brother or sister, a cousin, from me, when you inherit, you're either going to be looked at, because you are the spouse, or you're the non-spouse. And the rules are very different. It's quite easy to inherit as a spouse. You have three options. You can treat the IRA that you're inheriting as your own by designating yourself as the account owner. You can roll it into an IRA, or you treat yourself as a beneficiary rather than treating it as your own. And there are lots of pros and cons to each of these options, and it's going to depend on your exact situation at the time you inherit. Those details are not important. What's important to know is spouses are treated very differently from a non-spouse. For most non-spouse beneficiaries, you will have to empty that IRA you've inherited in 10 years, in the 10 years following the death of the person you inherited from. But you can't just wait till the end of the 10th year and then take all the money out. You have to do required minimums in years 1 through 9 if that original owner had already started taking RMDs. So for example, if my dad dies, my dad would say if he dies. When my dad dies, if I inherit his IRA, he's already started taking RMDs. I have to continue to take required minimums for those 9 years. And then the 10th year, I empty whatever the balance is based on the investments that I've had. If that's not the case, if they hadn't started the RMD, there is no RMD in years 1 through 9. So you don't have to take a minimum amount, but the account still has to be fully liquidated at the end of the 10th year. And this is literally, I talked to someone the other day, this is because deferred taxes are owed, someone who is expecting to inherit a $2 million IRA from her father. They have to liquidate that in 10 years. So there we go, $200,000 per year for the next 10. If you want to divide by 10, coming into their income. It is totally going to blow up their tax situation. On the other hand, they get an extra $200,000 a year. So they're not really complaining, but realize this is what's happening under the hood. And keep in mind, you can take more than the RMD any year. You just have to meet the minimum. It's as technical as we're going to get tonight. So thanks for hanging in there. So will there be a Secure Act 2.0? If you Google Secure Act, you're going to see 2.0. I call it, we're rolling the dice. Right now, the House has passed their version of Secure Act number 2, and this will further the rules around required minimums. And one of the big things is they're saying, well, if the version in the House passes, becomes law, they change the age, not 72 for required minimums, it would go up to 73. Then in 2029, it'll go to 74, and 2032, it'll go to 75. This kind of thing makes me crazy. So the House just at the end of March passed this. They have their Secure Act 2.0. It's now with the Senate. What's the timing? Yeah, we don't know. Are the provisions final? No. Are there other similar bills in the works? Yes, there are. So basically, we don't know. It's something to stay in tune with your advisor about so that you know how you have to take money out of your accounts. Enough with RMDs. Let's talk about something really exciting. But I also want to remind you before we do our last few slides here, please put your questions that you might have or comments in the chat, and we will be answering questions and having a chat after this, because I want to make sure if you had something you didn't understand and want more info, or if you'd like more information, or just want to ask a question, put it in the chat. We will be happy to answer them. Okay, ladies, here's the thing. We maybe had the deck stacked against us a bit. We have not been able to own our money for long. We've got really clear steps that we need to take to become more and more financially fearless after 50. And that's all leading to, we get to leverage this financial prowess we're building to change the world. Now, maybe our world is small. It might be just our family, or maybe it's doing something bigger and better and things you've always wanted to do. The power of money and what it enables you to do is frankly priceless. So let's go. We're charitable. Women particularly are charitable minded. We do want to change the world. We want to leave a mark on the world. And to put some numbers around it, $8 billion of contributions, charitable giving was spent or contributed to nonprofits that specifically help women and girls. 2018 number, it's the most current available. And that seems like a lot, doesn't it? 8 billion. Yeah, it pales in comparison to the overall charitable giving of this country. $471 billion in total in 2020. So what that translates to for back to the 2018, less than 2% of all charitable giving goes to any women and girls specific efforts. I find that stunning. So I went digging around. It's like, all right, if we're not helping our girls, where's the money going? Here's the answer. We spend a lot as Americans giving to our religious house of worship choice. We spend a lot on education. We spend a lot on human services, foundations, public society benefits, health, et cetera, et cetera. Not that much on arts, by the way, if you were interested, or the environment. But we do spend a lot. Almost, we're approaching $500 billion. So this is very meaningful. This is partly how our dollars can help us leave a mark, change the world. And we're really critical to this whole effort, right? 84% of women say that giving to charities, the charities of their choice, is really important. And most of the men, 81% of men, there was a huge gap though, just 2 years ago. And with COVID, all of a sudden that has sort of reawakened the importance of giving to charities for both genders. In addition to the dollars we give time. Women are extremely generous with their time. 67% of women volunteered time to a charity or cause versus just over half of men. So it's not bad. And lots of reasons women can give time, and maybe it's just not yet. But as women over 50, we start to have some time, and we can start to give back in more meaningful ways than we could when we had kids running all around. So just very interesting, the importance of charities and giving back in our communities, in addition to everything else we do. This is really important to women. And, by nature, we are emotionally invested in our causes. We're driven by making sure there's an impact on where those dollars are going. We do prefer to plan out charitable giving. And for women versus men, it was interesting. We tend to focus on those family basics first: food, healthcare, shelter, making sure, when we're giving our dollars and our time, this is our primary objectives. We do lots of other things too, but this is where a lot of the first dollars go. What I find most interesting though is women, as a general comment, were less concerned with the tax benefits or the personal financial benefits. We're less knowledgeable and we're less concerned. Like, we're out to save the world, whatever on the tax side. So I would suggest this is an opportunity for learning, or how can you make those dollars that you've worked so hard for and you've invested, and now you can spend them on something important like a charity to you. How do you best do that? And by the way, it's not only charities, it is for our families as well. It may be that it's the time to help our grandkids go to college, or help our kids buy their first homes. There are strategic, tactical, financially sound ways to do this. And we need to know them. We can't just be, writing a check every time somebody knocks on the door. So I'm going to end here with letting you know, I so appreciate that you're here. And again, put your questions in the chat. Financially fearless females, what it comes down to is we just have what it takes. It doesn't matter our path in life. It doesn't matter how much money we have. It doesn't matter what we want to do with it. What matters is that we're owning it. We are doing it. We have the skills. This I hear over and over and over and over from women. Oh, but I don't know how to do this. Yes, you do. You absolutely know how to do this. If you can put dinner on the table, if you can work a job and raise your kids, if you can, walk across the street, you can, in fact, take on the financial side of your world. Do we need to sometimes build some confidence? Sure. But that's what your team is there for. That's what your advisory team is going to help you do. And the way I look at it, for financially fearless females, 3 F's, we need 3 D's to really be successful. And we have these. It takes discipline. It takes desire and it takes determination. Well, by golly, who's got more of that than the women of the world? So ladies, with that, let me leave you here with some notes. Thank you to Cornerstone. I found these on their website. I loved these quotes. My favorite is that top one. You are never, never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. We are not done, ladies. We might be north of 50, but by golly, we got road to run and we're going to do it. So please work with your advisors. Please ask every question that you want to ask. Carve out time to do it. We got this. So thank you very much for attending tonight. John and Christina, I cannot thank you enough for inviting me to come along. And I'd love to open up the floor to questions from all of our financially fearless females over 50.
Got quite a few here. I'll just go down the list. First is, if your RMD is more than you need to live on, what's the best thing to do with the excess?
Okay, I'm going to tell you this from my point of view, and then you're going to work with your advisor on your actual decision and your actual strategy. These are people who can live on Social Security and pensions, but then they're required to take this minimum. There is a charitable strategy that you can do with required minimums. So you can, if you're giving to charity anyway, you can apportion directly out of your IRA some of your or all of your RMD directly to the charity. So it comes out, it meets the RMD, but you don't have to pay tax on it. And then you can use the rest. You could also use it as gifting, whether it's, well, if you're going to do it to a charity, do it in the right direction. But if it's to your kids or your grandkids, you can use RMDs to put a gifting strategy. So what I would say is it is super important. That's an excellent question, because what it points out is there are so many layers to these laws, so much complexity, that unless you love this stuff and live and breathe it every day, it's easy to not know that there are really financially savvy ways you can use that money that you're now required to take out. So it's critical that you meet with your advisor and look at your entire retirement income plan and financial goals to figure out where this would best go and in which street can you walk down the best way with that money that perhaps you don't need. That's an awesome position to be in. John or Christina, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you did a great job.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll ask the next question. Why are RMDs required for Roth 401k plans if taxes have already been paid?
Now, taxes have been paid, so you don't pay tax again. But the laws right now, RMDs were invented way before Roth 401ks. So right now, if you keep your money in the K, in the qualified retirement plan, the whole plan has to be calculated and distributed. So it's just the way the laws are written. And what I would say is they haven't kept up yet. So the real question you want to ask yourself is there a reason you would keep your Roth K side of your 401k? Is there any reason you would keep your 401k after you leave a company? And if so, why would you want to do that? And again, that's a big discussion you should have with your advisor, because sometimes there could be a reason. I mean, frankly, you could be working, so that's a big reason. But if you're working in the plan and the company that houses the plan, you don't have a required minimum until you retire, so after 72. But if you've just got money sitting around in an old 401k, that might not be your best investment strategy. So that's a discussion to have with your advisor and see what you really should do. And then if you rolled it into a 401 to a regular Roth IRA, then there's no required minimum distribution. So the money isn't being forced out of a tax advantage status. So that's what I'd say about that question.
Sometimes the rules don't make any sense, right, Marcia?
Well, they don't. That's a good point, John. And it really is the sequence in which things happen. So required minimums are long-standing rules with 401k plans and IRAs. But then years later, then we had Roth IRAs, and they had their particular basket of laws that went with them. But then, oh yeah, we sort of bolted on the Roth 401k, and there's a lot of 403bs also have a Roth component now. They get bolted on, but it takes Congress a really long time to change the law, and then the regulators to figure out how to interpret the law, and then the financial companies figure out how to implement it. So it's not an easy thing to do, but just now that you're aware and you know that if you leave your money in the 401k, you have to take required minimums, but that might not be the best strategy for you. So it's time to ask new questions.
All right, we had a comment that is not really a question, but it says at age 65, it seems too late and too expensive to pay for long-term care insurance. ...
Okay, well, yes, you are correct. The way insurance works, you have to understand and take a step back into the big world of America, in corporate America. Insurance works by pooling. You're pooling your risk, you're pooling your resources, so that when you need them, there will be money there that is above and beyond what you could have saved as an individual. So this idea of long-term care is an interesting one. It's a really interesting business model. This is for protection if you end up needing full-time or largely full-time care in your oldest ages, usually. Could be if you have a cognitive impairment and can't live at home by yourself anymore. It could be that you just, with old age, you need assistance. So the idea here is that you've been saving up for decades so that when your turn comes, you will have a pool of money from which all your bills will be paid, or a lot of your bills will be paid. So the idea is okay, but it's super expensive even when you're not 65. And so what happens at 45, which is kind of the early 40s are the ideal, if you can go back in time, your 40s, early 40s are a really good time to start making the decision to fund a long-term care policy. But at that point, for many people, they've got 3 kids at home and 3 colleges in the wings. And maybe they're helping mom and dad who are elderly, and they're still in this build mode. So it's not like you had the money to actually put into a long-term care policy. So then fast forward, you're 65, it was like a blink of an eye, and all of a sudden here you are. And now you understand how valuable that could be, but it is super expensive for most people. So again, this is having a health, what I'll put broadly under the health strategy for you is have those discussions with your advisor. Like, what options are out there? What do I need to consider? How do I need to think about covering myself should I need healthcare? It's also a time to start talking to your family. And I would appreciate if any of you are older who are here tonight in your 80s, I'm going to say, or even late 70s, if you have adult children, it would be super duper if you all would start the conversation. Because I'm telling you, I battle with my mother over this conversation. She does not want to talk about it. She's happy to talk about dying, by the way. She's got her burial plot. She's done all the good things to be dead. And my conversation, which I never thought I would say to my mother, is, but Mom, I'm not talking about when you're dead. It's between today and dead. What's going to happen when you fall down those stairs? So it's a very hard conversation to have. We all, by and large, are in a situation where we don't have solutions. Long-term care is expensive. There are some policies that are hybrid policies between life insurance and long-term care. You could look into those. But this is some homework. It would be a really good exploratory, because if you do end up in assisted care, it's very expensive. If you wind down all of your assets, which is usually not anyone's wish or goal, then Medicaid steps in. And that is our social safety net if we are very old and out of money and still need care.
Great. And we have two more questions. We're a little bit over the time, but as long as you're okay with still answering, we'll keep going.
Sure.
If you have not been as organized as you had hoped and you are 65 years old, how can you recover?
Oh, you have plenty of time. You are just fine. You know what? It's really daunting if you're looking at this and sort of kicking yourself in the behind and saying, shoot, I shoulda. Yeah, we all have that list. Do not despair. It's make a list and then you chip away one account type or one institution or one question you need answered at a time. And I truly cannot stress enough how important it is to schedule this on your calendar. It is so easy for us to not be able to find the time. And it's easy to get distracted, and there are a lot more fun things to do. But you put an hour a day, or you pick 2 hours on Saturday morning or 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, small bits of time consistently every week. And you'll be surprised, in a month, you put 8 hours in, you will be getting yourself organized. And it's not too late. And the better organized you are, then you can, have these really meaningful conversations with your advisor, because we do have stuff scattered everywhere. And I want to say I counted, so I'm married to Dan. I want to say we have 17 different accounts between the two of us. Mostly necessary. Like I said, I consolidated my ridiculous number of IRAs there a while ago. But it's still just the very complexity of the financial world. We have a lot of stuff. So don't beat yourself up. Put a plan in place. I have color-coded calendars. I have Post-it notes and lists, all fine tools.
Marcia, I need to talk to Dan about organizing your accounts. Next one is, do you advise Medicare Advantage or supplemental plans?
I do not sell any insurance. I don't sell any products. I happen to have a deep expertise in Medicare. So I provide lots of good education on Medicare. I do one-on-one consults. These are fee-for-service arrangements so that I can help you make your decision. It is very complicated. There's Medigap plans or supplemental, and then Medicare Advantage plans. And it's largely going to be dependent on a number of big factors for you. Like, must you see certain doctors? And because you have a special situation, a special health condition, so you've got to see someone in particular. You have to find out if they would even take a Medicare Advantage plan that you're looking for. Do you live in a region where you have tons? Are you in Boston metro areas? We have every possible option to us. Or are you up in Northern Maine, where you might only have one hospital system? There's lots of pros and cons to each. How much budget do you have to spend on healthcare and retirement? It is not cheap. Nothing's cheap in the healthcare side of retirement. So I provide a lot of education, information, and help you navigate through the websites to come to your decisions.
Great. John, do we want to go with the last two questions? There's a couple more that came in, but I'm just wasn't sure on timing.
It's up to Marcia.
I'm good. I always plan for lots of questions. I find these presentations get questions going. So yeah, happy to answer them.
Okay, great. I'll go with the next one then. Is it really
Okay.
worth doing the socially responsible route, or should I take care of me more so?
Take care of
yourself versus doing the socially responsible investing.
Oh, I love this question. I've never gotten this one before. And I would say you are a financially fearless female. Do whatever the hell you want. Just make sure it works in your plan. So any which way, I shared with you, legacy, I'm on the fence. I love my daughters dearly, but I want to spend some money. I've worked really hard for it. So legacy is not my driver.
Got it. Okay. And then at 65 and still have good health insurance through work, should you take Part A as it is free?
Oh, okay. now you're going to make me get on my soapbox, ladies. Let me be very clear. There ain't nothing in Medicare that's free. So your free Part A is costly on several fronts. One is that you have a $1,500 deductible if you end up in the hospital. So not free. The second thing is the answer depends. So yes, when you're 65, still working, and you work for a large employer, one with 21 or more employees, you can stay on your insurance with your company. If you do not have a high deductible health plan with an HSA that you participate in, then you can pick up Part A. And it is nice to have your Medicare number in advance. There's some helpful things to that later. But if you're contributing to an HSA, you cannot have any part of Medicare. And I talk to more and more and more people, because HSAs are becoming quite a thing. A lot more people have them today than they did 10 years ago. You have to be very cautious. If you're going to jump into Part A, you can, but not if you have an HSA, because no contributions are allowed. And then you end up in an excess contribution situation. Then you're learning the laws about how do you unwind an excess and pay a 6% and avoid paying a 6% excise tax. So again, I would consult and check in with your advisor before just deciding to pick up Part A. The other thing I will say is when you're working after 62, whenever you decide to start Social Security, and it might be you're waiting till your full retirement age of 66 and 6 months or whatever, up to 67. If you jump into Social Security at that point while you're still working, you can do that, but it automatically triggers Part A. And I call them the dynamic duo. You cannot decouple Part A from Social Security. So whenever you jump into Social Security, bam, you've got your Part A with you. And if you have that HSA at work, that's a problem. So that's what we need to prepare for that and make the steps really clear and not get you into trouble.
All right, the next question is another one related to Medicare. It's should I ask an area agency on aging for help choosing a Medicare companion plan?
Ask the Council on Aging.
Yes.
Is that what she said? Yeah, your local senior center or Council on Aging, they are a wealth of information, unlike everything in your community, but they also very often host the SHIP representatives. The SHIP are the state health insurance volunteers who help everyone. This is actually a case where it's kind of free. You don't pay anything to meet with a SHIP counselor. They will help you navigate through the options in your zip code, which is how the insurance plans are divvied up around the country. So yes, it is extremely helpful for you to get to know and love your local Council on Aging. Make sure you're getting their newsletters. The COAs are for everyone 50 and older. Get their newsletters, find out when the SHIP representatives come and they do Medicare presentations. Some of the time we're doing them virtually. They're very, very helpful to you. So yes, I'm a big fan. And it's, if you want to go to their website, it's SHIP as in a boat, SHIP as in Paul, ShipTACenter.org. ShipTACenter.org. Or just Google SHIP in New Hampshire or wherever you are.
I think that's it for questions. Marcia, I had one question for you. I know you've written a couple books on Social Security and retirement.
Yes.
Where can anyone find out information, basic financial literacy information, whether it be in books or online or AARP magazine?
Yep. There are some really, really good resources. So I have two answers to that question. The first is wherever you are in your financial journey, you need to pick one or two or three, no more than three good resources. So, and everyone's going to be different. So I would pick a large financial company You don't have to work with them. There is so much free stuff, information, education, videos, and so forth out online. You may as well take advantage of it. You know, as boomers, we did not grow up with the internet. I mean, this thing is so powerful that I pick one financial company. I usually only pick 1 or 2 books. Well, I read a lot about Medicare, so my book list is not going to be what you're going to want. But there's a book about living to 100. I'll have to get the name of it for you, but it's like Living to 100. And I'm enamored with this book because, ladies, that's what we're going to do. You know, okay, we might not make it all the way to 100, but dang, we're going to be old. So, you know, let's learn along the way. So yes, I am a big fan of books. So if you're a Kindle reader, if you like to buy books, go to the library, just pick something on that you'll like to read and you'll finish. So books and podcasts are wildly popular. So if you're driving and listening to a podcast, or if this is what you do, I don't have any. I'm trying to think if I have any offhand. Do either John or Christina, do you do a podcast? Yeah, Living to 100. Thank you, Jean. That's awesome. Do either of your advisory shops do a podcast? Okay.
No, we don't.
Okay. But there are a lot of good ones out there. I've been on Jean Chatsky with Jean's Her Money, her podcast, and she skews a little bit younger than us groovy gals after 50, but she's got good content. So I would say just search around. My rule is always, there's a billion options out there. You pick 3, narrow down to 1. Oh, and my second part of that answer for Jonathan and Christina, for you all, if you don't already have this, create a bookshelf. I call it a bookshelf in your office. So pick your favorites and offer those recommendations to your clients. I think that's a real value add that advisors can do. Not to give you a homework assignment, but.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marcia. This was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Christina, for hosting this and inviting me to come along.
So we're recording this today, and we'll be both posting it on our websites within the next week, along with the transcript. So anyone that wants to review this again, or that has a friend or a colleague or relative that would like to view it, view the recording, we'll be posting it online within the next week. But thank you so much again, Marcia. This was awesome.